Good morning, and welcome to the almost completed Westwood development. We're gaining on it. It's often said that good things come to those who wait, and we have waited a long time for this project to happen. The first earmark of money for this project was actually back in 2004. And they say that patience is a virtue. We've been very patient getting this project off the ground. As difficult as it was at times, the Housing Authority never lost sight of the importance of adding fully accessible housing for individuals with disability to our state portfolio. Over the past 9 years in our federal developments, we have reconditioned 65 existing units into fully accessible units so that 5% of our housing portfolio meets the requirements for families with a disabled household member. These 12 units you see here today will be our first state-aided, fully accessible family units, which is why it was so important for us to bring this project to completion. Not just for the Housing Authority, but for the 12 families who now will have suitable housing. Very briefly, the buildings are made up of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. As I said, they're fully accessible and equipped with audio and visual alarms. All units are air conditioned, and all units have off-street parking. The roof lines, although they look unique, are designed for solar panels, which will be put on at the completion of the project. Every apartment has cathedral ceilings to allow for open and airy space, and a window at the top to allow for natural light to come into the units. Very early on, this project was very much in jeopardy when it was discovered that the soil was contaminated, which required 3 feet of soil to be removed from the entire site and replaced with clean fill. This is not just a bricks and mortar project that you see here today. But more importantly, this was a substantial neighborhood environmental cleanup project resulting in just over $2 million in soil remediation. As with most projects this size, this was a big team effort, and I want to just take a moment to recognize some of the individuals who made this project happen. Recently retired Director of Modernization and Development for this project was Ann Shoemaker, who brought this project to new heights over the last many years, and Cynthia Spence, who is now the Director of Modernization, brought us in for a safe landing. I also want to recognize Pat, Susan, and John for their efforts on the project. Thank you all very much. I'll take a minute and recognize the Board of Commissioners of the New Bedford Housing Authority. To my right is Chairman Bruce Olivera. Vice Chairwoman is Cynthia Edwards. Treasurer is Reverend Leona Fisher. Attorney Tim Walsh and Melvin Davis. Thank you for your support, ladies and gentlemen. My saviors in the field, Leo Cote, Jim O'Dowd, and Bob Balashi, who kept this project moving forward thanks to their professionalism and working together. Thank you, guys. Great work. I want to recognize the contractor on the project, Mike Varica from Varica Construction and his in-house team, and along with the many, many subcontractors who worked in this project as well. And I'd like to give some recognition and thanks to our attorney on the project, Jim Pellegrin. Jim kept us grounded with his sage legal advice and kept me focused on the end result of the project. As you can see from the pictures to the right, this was a very undesirable project for many reasons, undesirable site for many reasons. The buildings were Army-style barracks, which lent nothing to the neighborhood, and through age and inadequate funding, became a boarded-up, graffiti-ridden eyesore. Knowing how hard our first guest has worked to clean up neighborhoods and the many tree plantings he has orchestrated throughout the city, this development was built with his visions in mind. But by dividing the property, we have brought back that neighborhood feel, and the many plantings give the image of the days of old. Along with our Mill Street development, which is about half a mile east of here, we stand encouraged with how projects like these can transform a neighborhood, and we are proud to have the ability to do it. With that, I'd introduce good Mayor Jon Mitchell.
Steve, I appreciate the the recognition of and the acknowledgement of our tree plantings, especially by your inclusion of these mums right here in front of the podium. That's a really nice touch. You guys thought of everything. This is a project everybody's been looking forward to for a while, for an awfully long time. And the picture, I'm glad we included those blow-ups over there, because they're a reminder, at least for me, of just what a disaster this property had been. It was blighted. It was, I think they were originally World War II era veterans housing, like a lot of the city's public housing stock that was originally built for returning veterans. And it certainly showed its age, and it needed to be improved. It needed to be integrated with the neighborhood, woven into the neighborhood. And so, behold, I mean, this project speaks for itself. I mean, it's not nearly as many units. It was my belief, and we talked to the previous gubernatorial administration about this, that we shouldn't just be going back and doing the same thing again, the same number of units in the same way, that we had to really think about the needs of the neighborhood and the needs of folks who are looking for housing in particular, families with individuals who needed handicap accessible housing. And so, it was a good dialogue, both with the state through 2 gubernatorial administrations, as well as the Housing Authority. And, the end result is something that works for everybody, that will work for everybody. It's human scale development, as city planners would tell you, in terms of just the scale and the spacing and the street edge. It's well landscaped. It looks great. There was attention to detail in all seriousness, but apart from the mums here, the street lighting and the landscaping really will make this place be a source of pride for the residents and for the neighborhood more generally. So this is the kind of public housing that works in our city, and we're really grateful to Steve and to Bruce and the entire board for their persistence in seeing this through, because that's what was needed, real persistence. And when you persist, as Steve was alluding to, you can get the results you need. I want to thank Senator Montigny and Representative Cabral for their support of not just this project, but also for providing housing options for the city's residents. We're all in the business of making sure that the residents of New Bedford in need of a roof over their heads get one, and that's what we are committed to. I want to recognize also my good friend, someone who, like me, is foolish enough not to go outside without a coat today. Former director of the Housing Authority, Joe Finnerty, who's come by and who can tell you more than most how a project like this would work to satisfy the needs of this neighborhood and of the residents who seek public housing. Thanks for being here, Joe. I wanted to, and I also want to thank the administration of Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito, and Secretary Jay Ash. Undersecretary Chan is here. We welcome you and thank you for supporting the creation of really solid housing options like this in our neighborhoods. New Bedford is a place, and as you and I were discussing, when you got down here, you said the place looks great, and indeed it does. We're a city that wants to convey to our residents and to the rest of the world that we're a place that cares about itself. And so, the extra attention to detail, the work that was put in, the excellence of the contractors and planners all shows here, and it's really a mark of where the city is going more generally. So thank you, everybody, for making this happen, and we're on to the next project. Thanks.
Westwood is one of the few new construction projects that DHCD has undertaken in a number of years. So we're very pleased, as John said, to have the Undersecretary for the Department of Housing and Community Development, Janelle Chan, join us today. Although new to the department, Undersecretary Chan has extensive housing knowledge, and we're looking forward to her leadership at DHCD. Before I introduce the Undersecretary, I want to take a moment and recognize one individual from the department. I know she's out sick today and can't make it down here, and I'm very sorry, but I'm still going to make my comments about her. Although they have all been great to work with, the Associate Director Amy Stitley and I have developed a certain bond on this project. This project had more than its fair share of bumps in the road, and it's fair to say that Amy and I have developed a few battle scars along the way. I got the gray hair, she's got the battle scars. But at the end of the day, we persevered, we worked with the problems to get here, and this morning we celebrate on the 12 families who now will have suitable housing. For months, Amy and I had a standing 6 o'clock telephone call because we had to wait for the majority of the staff to leave the office before we could have that conversation. And very often, we didn't need a telephone to have the conversation. While she was in Boston, she could hear me, and while I was in New Bedford, I could hear her. For those that remained in the office, I am not kidding. We had some shouting matches to get this project where we are today. And I just want to recognize Amy. She did a wonderful job in getting, she persevered. And at the end of the day, this is what we have. And it's, really a lot of this is to Amy's credit in keeping this project on board. And for that, I say thank you to her. So having the Undersecretary here today underscores the importance of this project. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Undersecretary, Janelle Chan.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to this important celebration of an important project. So I took off my jacket, not because I forgot it, but in solidarity with our partners here. This project took persistence, it took grit to get through, and lo and behold, this is a project that we can all be proud to be a part of. So, I want to thank Stephen, really, for the many, many years of your leadership. Obviously, I have to thank Amy Stitley. I will tell her your kind words, and I'm sure they're well deserved. Also, the folks who are on the ground, David Can, DHCD architect, who managed to design, review the process through bidding. Linda Katsudas, DHCD project manager, who managed the budget, funding, schedule, all the important nitty-gritty things that aren't quite sexy, but are super important to get a project done. And Sean Keating, our construction advisor, who managed DHCD's interests during this time. And our interest is really to be able to have homes that give families the dignity that they deserve and to be a part of this wonderful community. So this site incorporates a lot of our shared values. One of them is that it takes advantage of using our current assets, right? Current assets, the governor often mentions that our assets aren't really usually a lot with beer bottles or whatnot. We want to make all of our assets the most optimal it could be, and this is what we have as a product. We want to make thoughtful, impactful redevelopments and choices to pursue green technologies. The solar panels here not only decrease greenhouse gas emissions, but it preserves affordability in the long run for both the housing authority, but also the residents and the utility bills. And that's important. All these key pieces, not just rent, the utilities and ongoing housing costs are very important for families who are the most vulnerable. And of course, we believe in building quality housing for our hardworking families. I'm going to share a personal story. When I moved my family to the U.S., we lived in 2 bedrooms. I lived with my parents and eventually my newborn brother in one of those bedrooms. My 2 aunts and my grandma lived in another room, and my uncle lived in the den. And so these homes is a wonderful, wonderful foundation for families to grow, to put down their roots, and for their children to prosper and thrive in these neighborhoods. And so this is really a personally a very validating, valuable project in my eyes. So I understand the project took a while to get off the ground, and that's probably an understatement. So when we went and switched to our formula funding, right, our goal is really to be able to prevent having projects that fall into disarray, to become an eyesore, to be able to allow for localities to spot their capital improvement needs and to fix them along the way. And so although our switch to formula funding might have delayed this project, we think in the ongoing future, we're hoping that for the whole portfolio throughout Massachusetts, we're able to keep our affordable housing, and specifically our public housing stock, in a good state of repair. So I understand there's more than 100 families on this wait list. that really shows us the need for family housing and the need for quality new construction in New Bedford. We know we don't have enough housing of all kinds here in the state of Massachusetts. That's why Governor Baker announced the Housing Choice Initiative last year and has rolled out a number of new programs and increased funding to help us address this critical issue of housing. It's why we support our market rate housing in our gateway cities through our Housing Development Incentive Program. It's why, with our friends in the legislature, thank you, Representative Cabral, for helping us pass our $1.8 billion housing bond bill. This is the largest bond bill that has ever been passed in our state legislature. And this is why we continue to explore opportunities with our local housing authorities to look at how we can improve our public housing production and preservation, as well as producing more housing, right? So since 2015 here in New Bedford, we've made a direct investment of $9 million. That's in addition to our state and federal tax credits. And we've supported the preservation and production of 200 units. About 150 of those are affordable. And the Baker-Polito administration has supported New Bedford's growth through a $2.5 million MassWorks grant for site readiness awards, and the Seaport Economic Council, the Seaport Economic Council Awards also were devoted to New Bedford. So today we celebrate a wonderful milestone for New Bedford and its residents. I am so proud to be part of this administration, to be part of this project, and congratulations, Steve, and to New Bedford.
Our next guest could not make it this morning. I believe he's tied up in Boston. That's Senator Montigny, but his legislative aide, Audra Riding, is here representing him this morning. Our next guest is a good friend of mine and an elected official who's been very helpful to both the Housing Authority as well as the gateway cities in the Commonwealth. Representative Cabral recently fought to secure the tax credit program through 2024, which encourages market rate development in the gateway cities. Just yesterday, Representative Cabral was awarded the Gateway Cities Champion Award in the 6th Annual Awards Summit here at the Whaley Museum. Tony has been a champion and an advocate for the housing industry, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce my good friend, Tony Cabral.
Well, good morning. Lots of things have been said already, but this is a wonderful project. I remember touring this site here with Steve and also a previous undersecretary of the housing, state housing department, and it was pretty impressive. The need was pretty impressive, and you can see on the photos here the condition of the site and the condition of the housing that was here. So we went to work. In particular, Steve went to work, and I think it's important to mention how tenacious Steve can be, how dedicated he is to really making the housing authority and the housing that is under the control of the housing authority the best it can be. And this is really an example of that. If there is a housing authority in the state that knows how to do it right and cares about the folks that they serve and they take care of, the New Bedford Housing Authority is number one on that list. And that's because of the work of Steve and the board, led by Bruce, and also the conversations that go on. I mean, this doesn't happen by itself. It's between the state and the city, as they may have mentioned at the beginning, in order to develop the kind of project that is worthy of those who are going to reside here, but also of the neighborhood. I think as you drive through here, as you walk through here, which I have done many times, knocking on doors in this area, and this is really going to transform and help transform this neighborhood and the working people and the folks who live here. They are folks who deserve that this neighborhood looks the best it can be for them as well and their families. And the opportunity to have a facility or a number of houses that can be folks with disabilities can have an opportunity to live in a place that is as good as this is going to be. I think that's tremendous. That was a lack. We have a lack of of housing in New Bedford and throughout the state that is able for and access for families with disabilities. This is a beginning here for us, and hopefully this is a model for the rest of the state in terms of how to do it right and how to really take the needs of families with disabilities and design and build something that really goes towards their needs and making them a comfortable living space for all the members of that particular family. Now the state has done a lot of investment in housing, but we all know housing, there's a crisis around housing, in particular affordable housing, housing that families can afford to live in, not only in New Bedford but throughout the state. As you imagine in the Boston area, trying to for those who work in the Boston area and actually live in the Boston area, it's quite a challenge, and that's becoming a challenge not only in the Boston area but in other areas of the state and also in New Bedford. So I think we need to continue moving forward, pressing forward. The state can do more, and we expect the state to do more. During this housing bond, the last housing bond bill that I had before my committee, it was $1.8 billion. It was the largest bonding bill that we did, but we lost other opportunities in that bond bill, which I hope we can recoup those opportunities come the next legislative session. For example, giving the ability for housing authorities to enter into partnerships with private industry, to take some of the older housing stock that is owned and run by the housing authority, and perhaps provide the kinds of incentives for private industry to move in and help remodel those particular units. Other facets of the state are doing that. Universities, for example, UMass Dartmouth just entered into an agreement to redo its entire dorm section, all the dorms, student dorms, precisely with that kind of ability to negotiate and partner with private industry. If that was not the case, the state would have to put up, and the state obviously is also lacks resources. You're talking about $200 to $300 million just to redo all the dorms at that particular university. So that's the kind of things we need to work on the next legislative session, is allow organizations such as the housing authorities to really be able to enter into those kinds of agreements, those kinds of contracts, those kinds of incentives, so they can take the money that is available and go further into what needs to be done to make every unit that people live in a unit that is up to date, that meets the needs of everyone, and at the same time it really helps beautify and transform neighborhoods, as this one is being with this project today. We have other neighborhoods that also deserve the same opportunity, and the resources, unfortunately, all the resources that we need in order to accomplish that, we need to at some point begin to consider partnering with private industry and private developers. So, Steve, congratulations, and to the board and to all of you, and nice to see you, Joe, here. I know you feel cold, I can see. Next time you got to bring a long coat, as I should myself. But it's nice to see so many of you and those who work in the housing authority, those who labor every day to maintain the place, all the housing in the condition that they are, ought to be also recognized for the fact that they are dedicated folks who work every day on behalf of all the residents that depend on the good units that the housing authority manages. So to all of you, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Tony. As I mentioned earlier, this project is not quite complete and the crews are still working. You can see them behind you and working to the north end of the property, but I would ask that after the ribbon cutting, you take an opportunity. I believe these two buildings are open. We have some refreshments and pastries in this building here, and we'd be very happy to show off what these units look like. So please, before you leave, take an opportunity to take a look at them. Before we leave, I just want to thank Wendy Rivera for her help in getting this event planned this morning. And I thank you all for coming. For those heading back to Boston, safe travels, and I thank you all for your participation in this project. Thank you.
What if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today. Learn how at ready.gov.